Hey guys, welcome back to How to Rip. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how you surf safely. And what I mean by that is how do you choose a beach which is suitable for your level of skill and where you can go out, have fun, improve your surfing, but not put yourself in unnecessary risk. Now this comes down to a few factors and we're going to talk about that in today's video.
Something like this one, on the wave, then looking.
Now the first thing we're going to talk about is choosing a beach with the appropriate wave height. Now when you're a beginner surfer, you don't need to be surfing big surf. 1 to 2 foot waves is all you need. That will give you ample opportunity to catch waves and practice standing up. If you love surfing, then you probably love the beach. And if you've spent time at a beach, you'll be familiar with the term the rip or a rip. Now a rip is where the water escapes out through a bit of a channel or a gutter. Either side of a rip you'll see waves breaking. Now advanced surfers will use a rip to their advantage. They'll use it to jump into and paddle out, which will take them out the back of the surf where the waves are. However, if you're a beginner, this isn't really that safe, especially if you don't have an adequate fitness level. Because what can happen is you get stuck in it, you fight against the rip, you get tired, and then the rip takes you all the way out to sea, and by that point you've got no energy left and you can't actually get back in. Especially if it's big out there, because you're going to be tired, the rip's taking you out the back of the surf, it's big, and then bad things can happen. So it's important that you can identify a rip. Rips can be identified by a few common traits. One is the water can be discoloured, it can be a little bit wavy, but not in the sense of waves breaking, but kind of choppy. And either side of the rip, waves will be breaking. Now if you do get caught in a rip, there's a few things that you can do to be safe and get out of it. Now the first thing is don't fight against the rip. Don't paddle straight against it, because you'll be fighting a losing battle. What you should do is just paddle across. Now that will take you out, the rip will still be taking you out to sea, but it would also put you in a position where the waves are breaking. And that's where we want to get to, because it'll be shallower there and you'll be put into a position where you can catch a wave back to shore and get safely out of the rip. Once you've identified where the rip is, you want to avoid that. Especially for beginner surfers, avoid rips at all costs. Now rips can be easily identified, however currents cannot. And currents are what happens underneath the water. Now depending on the tidal movement and what the wind's doing, there's a lot of things that can influence this. Generally currents either go left to right. They're not as dangerous as a rip because they don't actually take you out to sea. However, it's important to be aware of them because it will affect your position. Now this is why picking a landmark before you go out and surf is crucial, because you'll know if you're moving or not. And this will help you also stay in position to catch the best waves. It's also important to know what you're actually surfing over. Are you surfing over rocks, sand, reef, coral, etc.? By having that awareness, you'll know if you should take extra care when you fall off your board. Another hazard we should be aware of is river mouths or any sort of outlet. Now river mouths, depending on what the tide's doing, can create very dangerous currents and like a rip, suck you out to sea. It's important to identify where a river mouth is and to be aware that that can happen on an outgoing tide. It's also important to know how deep it is, because if the water's quite deep, well, you don't really have to worry how you're falling off. However, if the water's shallow, you need to be aware of that, because if you fall diving elbow first or head first, or even with straight legs, you can really injure yourself. So how do you fall correctly? Well, if it's shallow or there's any sort of reef or rock, then it's important to kind of belly flop, because that'll keep you flat on the surface instead of penetrating through and hitting the ground. Also for beginners, we would always recommend that you surf at beaches that have a sand bottom with limited rips. And always, no matter who you are, beginner, intermediate, advanced, surf with someone else. This is important because if something happens and you do get hurt, well, you've got someone else there who can help you. So it can sound like there's a lot to be aware of, and there is a lot to be aware of when you're talking about being aware of the ocean and what's happening and all the different potential hazards that there are. But now that you're aware of them, you can conduct a pre-surf safety check. So what that means is you rock up to your beach. Now, if you haven't been there before, it's important to speak to locals and ask them about, is it safe for you and your current skill level? Once you've established if it is safe and appropriate for your current skill level, then you can look at where you're going to surf. Have a look at where the other surfers are paddling out, look where they're sitting, and look where they're coming in. Take note of how big the waves are, because sometimes it can be quite inconsistent between sets, and you might look at it and think, oh, that looks fun, that looks appropriate for me, it only looks 2 foot. However, it could be really inconsistent that day, and every 10 minutes there might be a large set coming in that could cause you some discomfort. So always pay attention to the conditions. Also take note of where the sandbars are, because when you fall off it's important to know where the shallow sections are. These can easily be identified by watching the surf, but also have an idea of what's actually happening during your surf. Is the tide coming in? Is the tide coming out? If the tide's going out, then it will create shallower banks, which means you'll need to be careful because obviously it's more shallow and you're more prone to injury when falling. That's when using the belly flop technique will keep you safe. Your pre-surf safety check should include looking at where you're going to paddle out, where you're going to sit, including choosing a landmark that you can recognize when you're actually out in the surf. That could be a tree, a house, anything. Identify any rips or any currents by watching what's happening to the surfers out there. Are they drifting to the left? Are they drifting to the right? And of course, make sure that there's other people out in the surf with you. If you follow all these things, you will be safe and have fun out in the surf. Thanks for watching the video today, guys. Remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and comment below to let us know what else you want to see. Thanks for watching.